Well, let's bring in three members of Parliament now to discuss the latest efforts to get answers on the sexual misconduct allegations at the highest levels of the Canadian military. Anita Vandenbeld is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Michael Barrett is the ethics critic for the official opposition Conservatives. And Randall Garrison is the defence critic for the NDP. It's good to see you all. Look, here we are on International Women's Day, and we're focused on the continuing problem of sexual misconduct in the military and allegations of inappropriate behavior against the former chief of the defence staff and, in fact, his replacement. But that's where we are. Anita Vandenbeld, let me start with you. The Liberals agreed today to recall the defence minister and some top political aides in the government connected to this story. Let me start there. They were brought into the loop, those top officials, on the Vance allegations. What questions do you have for them when they get to committee?
Well, I think that the minister has always been very, very willing to come to committee. I think that we will actually be able to get more information than we did because we know that Mr. Walburn's testimony did open up some avenues. But what I think the most important thing is that the more information that comes out, the more that we see, the more it corroborates the fact that the minister took action. He took the appropriate action, that the senior officials wanted to start an investigation in 2018. And at the end of the day, if you have a complainant that does not want to come forward, or you have Mr. Walburn, we don't even know if he told the complainant that PCO wanted to do an investigation. It is really difficult because what you need to do, I think at the end of the day, there was nothing actionable in 2018. And
why couldn't a government official have called General Vance into the office and said, look, we are hearing about allegations of sexual misconduct. Is there anything we should know?
You don't go to the person and tell them. I think anyone who's been part of an investigation knows that a woman comes forward and says, I don't want to do an investigation. I don't want my name out. I want confidentiality. The last thing you do is go and tell the person. Right. I think did as a former detective in Vancouver, knowing that you have to make sure that everything is done appropriately, he went to the senior authorities who then wanted to start an investigation. But at the end of the day, the Ombud either couldn't or wouldn't provide the information or the email or whatever it is that was there. And you can't start an investigation when you don't have evidence. And I think that's where we're at now.
All right, Mr. Barrett, do you agree with that? That once it was clear, and Mr. Walburn's clear about that, the informant did not want her name to be brought forward. Is that the end of the conversation then?
No, absolutely not. And there's a number of things that could have been done. And if the contention is that the minister's actions were the appropriate ones, which we don't agree that they were, that there were other steps that officials could have taken in carrying out an investigation. And I think the comparison to the minister's time as a police officer would bear that out. That it wouldn't be case closed simply after one phone call or an email chain. The minister failed to take appropriate action on sexual assault allegations. These are 3 years old, and over that period of time, the government has gone to great lengths to make sure they don't come forward. And we've heard that, you know, the media reports this weekend that the government undertook a coordinated campaign to threaten and to try and silence a member of the Canadian Forces from reporting something as serious as sexual misconduct. I got to tell you, when you
that's the report. Have we seen any evidence that actually the government denies that it made any of those calls that Commander Trotters reported to? Well, the story is that he was threatened. Or some sort of anonymous threats, but has anybody been able to tie that back to anyone yet? I mean, he's coming to the Defence Committee, so they'll be able to ask him.
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing about this type of situation. I mean, you're cooperating or you're part of the cover-up, and what we're not seeing is forthrightness from this government. Both Minister Sajjan and Prime Minister Trudeau have been found to be on the different side of what the whistleblowers are saying, and I'm inclined to believe the women in this
Mr.
case.
Garrison, what more could the minister have done here if the person at the center of the claim, at the allegation, doesn't want her name revealed, may not want to pursue it? I guess that those are still. I mean, does that mean nobody then questions General Vance about his past at all, and it ends there?
Well, I think on International Women's Day, we have to back up a step here and look at what we're trying to accomplish. And that is, we're trying to have a Canadian Forces where it isn't part of the culture that sexual misconduct is tolerated. And what the examples of the two allegations against Chief of Defence staff make me worry about is that at the highest levels in the Canadian Forces and in truth, in the minister's office and in high government offices, there's not a real understanding of what it means to stamp out sexual misconduct. And these are examples where we can get caught in the details of which door was knocked on, which mechanism was used, when what we should be doing is trying to find out why, after 6 years and a failed program called Operation Honor, we still have a culture in the Canadian Forces that tolerates this kind of behavior, and we have a government that has failed to effectively investigate allegations.
But specifically on this allegation, if the Privy Council official and the Chief of Staff to the Minister at the time try to find out more information and that door closes to them, what else should be expected of them, Mr. Garrison?
Well, I think the military ombudsman was quite clear in his testimony. He did not say that the person who came forward wanted no action. He did not say that the person who came forward would never allow their name to be used. What he was trying to do was find a process which protect that person from recriminations, from damage to their career, and ways to provide support to them.
Which is what everyone should be focused on in a case like this, right?
That's right. And what he got was a stonewall in the minister's office and passing the buck off to PCO, which is not an investigative body for these kind of allegations by any means. So when you've got serious allegations against two chief of defense staff in a row, then we need to have an inquiry into what's actually going on here.
All right. Anita Vandenbeld, let me have you pick up on that. So
yes,
go ahead.
I think that we really do have to focus on the women. And yes, we have been working on this for a number of years. Is there more to do? Absolutely. I think the thing that comes out of this that is the most concerning is the fact that the women didn't feel they could come forward. We need to create a culture where women do feel they can come forward. But at the end of the day, you have to respect what the women's wishes are. And the fact is, after PCO contacted Mr. Walborn, we don't know if
but to Mr. Garrison's point, is it to Mr. Garrison's point, is it clear of what, I mean, you know, for some people, it sounds like the investigation hits or not even an investigation, the potential inquiry into what actually happened hits a dead end, as Mr. Garrison has suggested, unresolved because, to his point, Mr. Walborn didn't say that the woman who came forward never wanted to have her name used or never wanted to proceed. It was at that point. What more should have been done?
We're seeing more and more that as things are coming out, that's exactly what happened. There were emails back to Mr. Walborn asking him to share the information or evidence with PCO. There were multiple attempts to try to get that information because PCO wanted to start an investigation.
All right, Mr. Barrett, we're short on time here. I got to move ahead. Mr. Barrett, so if that's the case, next steps here, where does this committee go in terms of pushing to get answers here to find out what more could have been done? Sounds like the Liberals are clear. They think they did everything.
Well, they did everything they could to keep this from coming to light for 3 years, and now we're on their doorstep. The opposition's on their doorstep looking for answers. I mean, it's important to note that the minister publicly said he was surprised to learn of these allegations about the former chief of defense staff 2 weeks ago. But now we know that the only things he didn't know was because he refused to do the right thing and to protect the women who came forward. That's an unbelievable revelation. So he will be in front of committee, and he's going to need to answer for that. It's also clear that I think it's very important, Mr. Garrison's point, that PCO isn't an investigative body. And so, we heard this weird comment from the minister about a chain of evidence. Well, that only matters if there's a criminal investigation. If the minister believed criminality occurred, he had an obligation to report this to the police, and he failed to do that.
Mr. Garrison, it occurs to me that Mr. Sajjan's coming back. One of the things Mr. Walborn said at committee is, look, if you have somebody from government come back to refute my testimony, please have me back so I can speak to what they've said in refuting my testimony. Do you think he needs to come back if Harjit Sajjan's coming back?
I guess we could get into a long chain of this, but I want to hear from the minister. Obviously, what he said in his first appearance before the committee has been directly contradicted by the testimony of the ombudsman. I believe the military ombudsman is an honorable man who has no reason at all to try and deceive the committee. So the minister now has an obligation to square that circle, to tell us why he doesn't think that testimony was right, which he said in a public statement.
All right, we'll continue to follow your committee's work. Thank you all for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.